Thank you very much. I'd like to call the Planning and Heritage Subcommittee meeting to order. We do have regrets from Councillor Ingram. Moving on to item number 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Item number 3, delegations. We have none scheduled. However, one request via today's addenda will be addressed here. So to that end, we did receive an addendum for the meeting today. 5.1 with regards to the proposal of the exemption from sign bylaw 159-200 section 12 ground sign specifications with the municipal address of 327 Erie Street. And just to inform the committees, that subcommittee, that the owner of Permanent Solutions is available to answer questions if some arise. And the second item on the addendum is that correspondence from Lorena McKenna dated May the 24th, 2022 be received for information, and that the delegation by Lorena McKenna, Director of Falstaff Family Center, regarding item 5.2, proposed exemption from sign bylaw 159-2004 with regards to a municipal address of 35 Waterloo Street North be heard. So a mover for that to receive the addenda. Thank you, Councillor Bunting, second by Councillor Vasilakos. Oh, I just need the one, I apologize. So all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on into the item number 4, report of the manager of planning. 4.1, proposed amendment to site plan approval delegated authority bylaw. And I believe Ms. Bridge is available to speak to this.
Thank you, through the chair. So as mentioned, you have before you this afternoon a report that outlines some changes to the city's delegated approval bylaw for site plan control. So as the subcommittee is aware, earlier this year, Bill 109 received royal assent from the province. That bill changed a number of provincial statutes, but made a number of changes to the Planning Act. And one of those changes to the Planning Act has to do with site plan approval. And specifically, it requires that site plan approval matters be delegated to staff rather than being considered by municipal councils or committees of council. This change comes into effect in July of this year. So the City of Stratford is well positioned to navigate this change, as we have an existing delegated approval bylaw for site plan approval and had been using this process for a number of years. However, the current bylaw does have some circumstances where site plan approval can be referred back to council for a decision. And when those Planning Act changes come into effect on July 1st, that will no longer be permissible. Staff believe that the overall impact on site plan approval in the City of Stratford will be minimal with this change, as the referral tool has rarely been used. I'd be pleased to take any questions that subcommittee has at this time.
Questions for Ms. Bridge? Seeing none, there is a staff recommendation. Councillor Vasilakos, you will move that. Seeing no questions, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed of any, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving down to report of the municipal law enforcement officer. 5.1, proposed exemption from sign bylaw 159-204 section 12 ground sign specification table with the address 327 Erie Street. And I'm believing that perhaps Mr. DeWeerd will speak to this item. There you are. Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I can speak briefly to this report. So the purpose of this report is to provide an exemption to the sign bylaw 159/2004, section 12 ground sign specification table for 327 Erie Street. Staff were contacted by Permit Solutions with regards to this sign, and essentially what they are looking to do is to enlarge the sign copy on this existing sign panel. In general, we are okay with the proposal, but we do have some concerns about the sign face lowering down on the bottom, and that's where you'll see our recommendation is that we do approve an increased maximum sign area of 28.5 square feet, but that we maintain the lowest panel at 9.98 feet from grade to the bottom of the sign, with the intention to not make a bad situation worse with lowering the sign within the site triangle at that intersection. And I'm open to take any questions that you might have on this recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. DeWeerd. Any questions? Seeing none, then there is a staff recommendation. A mover. Thank you, Councillor Clifford. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Then moving down to 5.2, Mr. DeWeerd, could you give us an overview of that? And then we'll allow Ms. McKenna to come forward as well. So go ahead, Mr. DeWeerd.
Very good. Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a proposed exemption from sign bylaw 159/2004 for the civic address of 35 Waterloo Street North. And what we're considering today is an exemption with regards to the number of signs and location of signs in this particular case. There are a number of signs. We're looking at 5 additional signs, ground signs being installed on the municipal property. And these signs are adjacent to the property, and they are actually being proposed within the city's right of way there as well. And in this case, we've got 2 staff recommendations. It's at the committee's discretion, with the first being that the sign variance for the 5 additional ground signs be denied, as the signs do not currently, as they're being proposed, sit on the applicant's property, and that this number of signs exceed the number of signs permitted in a residential zone. The other option in this case is that if council decides that they wish to grant this exemption, that the following wording be provided: that the sign variance for the 5 signs located on municipal property adjacent to 35 Waterloo Street be approved, provided the applicant enters into an encroachment agreement with the city for the signs, and as well as the fence that's installed on the city property, and that the proper design documents are provided with a sign permit application to the city.
Thank you. Any questions before we, Councillor Bunting?
Yeah, just out of semantics here, in relation to the actual fence itself, how far is it encroaching on the city land? Or obviously it's been there for a very long time, as far as long as I can remember anyways.
Yeah, I would agree through the chair that the fence has been there for a long time. It encroaches, it's on the survey, it encroaches anywhere from 6 inches to a foot onto the city right away. And then there's a site triangle issue in the one corner. But yeah, again, it has been there for a very long time.
And I assume that would be probably because of the trees that were planted and were quite large when the fence was put up, I'm assuming, and so they had to put it somewhere. I don't know. Of course, none of us know how it went down back 40 years ago or however long it was.
Councillor Clifford?
Yeah, I was going to ask our building official, is it common to have a private, like on municipal property? Is that common? I just don't remember a lot of them on municipal property, but possibly you can illuminate me on this.
And through the chair to Councillor Clifford, yeah, I don't believe we have very many requests that do come for signs to be installed on the city property adjacent. To my recollection, in the time I've been here, this is the first one that's come up on the city right away, but not to say that it hasn't happened prior to that.
Councillor Clifford and then Councillor Vasilakis.
I was just going to ask, if we do this, is that a precedent setting? Like, does it encourage other people to do it? I've got a concern in that. I just want to know what your opinion is. If we allow one, is that going to open even a small creek, not a floodgate?
Yeah, and again, through the chair, yeah, I guess At the end of the day, any of these could set precedent. It depends on the nature of the committee and the council decision in this case as to whether you deem that as setting precedent.
Councillor Vasilakos?
We deal with encroachments quite often, you know, when construction gets done, we discover that there's like a retaining wall, or we just did one recently. And I think we've always taken the position that it doesn't set precedent, that each one is unique and different and new. And as long as, does the fence meet sort of our encroachment bylaw as an encroachment? And could we reasonably enter in, my only question is, can we reasonably enter into an encroachment agreement given what the structure is under our encroachment bylaw?
Yeah, and again, through the chair to Councillor Vasilakos, yes, I believe we have had those conversations with the clerk's department, and there is a reasonable way forward to include the fence and the signs in an encroachment agreement. We have not proceeded with that process yet, as we are waiting for direction on this matter. It didn't make sense to get that matter any further forward. So,
Yeah, and to that end, I agree with Councillor Vasilakos that we can take each application on its own merits. So I would concur with that. So if there are no further questions, I would ask the clerk if we could bring Ms. McKenna in.
Through the chair, we are working to connect Ms. McKenna. Lorena, can you hear us?
I can.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorena. And the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Chair and the councillors, for offering me an opportunity to speak with you this afternoon on this subject. I apologize that you may hear some noise around me. I just left a recording studio and I'm going to get onto a train in a few minutes. So I've taken coverage in a hotel. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I don't know if everyone, and I know that there's always a lot to read in on any subject, but I was thinking that if the committee had read the letter that I had written, that it could expedite things. Otherwise, I can just go over it, not letter by letter, but the sentiment of it.
Go ahead with that, the latter.
Okay.
Ms. McKenna.
Okay. I mean, essentially, I'm sure that that the councillors are aware that this is not the mainstay of my business, that the Falstaff Family Centre is really, on the most part, a philanthropic kind of enterprise. Certainly wanting to reach out and support different elements of the community, and particularly those who might need a little extra hand. So with that in mind, what we've learned over the years since I purchased the property in 2000, that there are different groups. Sometimes we have permanent tenants like we have right now. They care for kids. They have their operation on the main floor, and the Stratford Middle Years is upstairs. We host the Multicultural Association downstairs. So those are our three permanent tenants, and their signage needs are partially covered off by the sign that's already on the property. I would say the Multicultural Association has signage needs, but there's not a way to support those at the moment. We have other kinds of groups. Sometimes we just come in for one day or for an event or an enterprise. For example, this weekend we have at the Perth a Children's Water Festival that is hosted by the Upper Thames Conservation Authority. In the summer, we have a bit more of a residency, but not a permanent tenant, and that's the Here for Now Theatre Company. So they'll be there for a couple of months. So the needs are tenants, non-tenants, one-off situations, and then somewhat extended situations. And of course, we now hosting the Medicine Wheel garden on the property, and wanting to make that available to First Nations and Indigenous people. They have their various events that they are wanting to promote as well. Being sensitive to the fact that it is quite a large property in a residential neighborhood, we took the initiative, I guess it was in March, time has gone by so fast, to send a letter around to, I think it was about 80 of the neighbors, and about 5 or 6 replied and attended a meeting we held to explore what their concerns and share information, share with them what our goals are, and also to make sure that we've initiated a line of communication with the neighbors, because people will have different positions, perhaps, or feelings about how many signs, what kind of signs, how big the signs are, etc., and for what purpose. But on the most part, the feedback as captured in the letter was quite supportive. Again, we wanted to make sure that step of connecting with the neighbors was undertaken. I'm just looking through the different signs. The reason for the different sign placements does not necessarily mean there'll be signs up there all the time. In fact, there would be great periods of time I would expect there'd be no signs. But let's say, for example, with the Here for Now Theatre Company, in our ideal of worlds, we'd have a fairly large sign on the front of the property, alerting the drivers by and the walkers by that the Here for Now Theatre Company is now positioning themselves at the property, and that their season starts, I think, on the 5th of July or whatever date it is in July. Once that would be established, I would see taking that large announcing sign down and putting up 2 smaller side signs, one on the Elizabeth side of the street, and then one facing the William Street side. And that would be primarily for the Here for Now people have indicated to us, I think about 60% of their visitors or their attendees are from out of town. So it would be primarily to help identify the property with that enterprise, but without then having the big initial sign up. There could be times, however, there could be overlapping events. So one such example could be if there was some banner, let's say up for a week or 2, alerting the community to the fact that there's national or the National Indigenous Day on the 21st of June, that it may cross over with the Here for Now banner. But of course, once that event, that the Indigenous people would have, that banner would come down. So that gives you a bit of an idea, and it's explained further in the supplement letter that I left with youth councillors. I think the other thing that we were trying to be cognizant of is just how things would look when the banners would be down, or I call them banners, but they're really signs. And there'd be like a changeable sign. We decided we didn't want to have an electric sign such as they have at St. James. That certainly was a feeling that the neighbours shared with us when we met with them. And so it's a change copy sign. But how are they affixed? So we felt that maybe one of the more aesthetically pleasing, when one's put in those terms, mechanisms to affix them would be to have a kind of a wooden lattice work. So when there's nothing there, it wouldn't look garish. There isn't some heavy metal infrastructure. I think the last point is, let me see, sorry, it's not the ideal situation between this. I think that's probably about it. That gives you a bit of the background of that there be could be a variety of these, of different sizes up for different purposes and for different durations of time, but with the guiding principle that there would not be signs up any law, they wouldn't be gratuitously just there. So I think that I would wrap up with that, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
So thank you for your information, the supporting letters and the presentation, Ms. McKenna. And I'll turn to the subcommittee if there's any questions for Ms. McKenna. Councillor Vasilakos, go ahead.
I just wanted to confirm that you are amenable to entering into an encroachment agreement with the city for these sign placements.
Yes, we would be, and we did have this discussion, and it seems most reasonable to do so.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Bunting.
This isn't for Ms. McKennett, it's for staff. With respect to the 45-degree fence, I take it that that's not on city property, or at least a part of it's not on city property. The one at the corner of William Street and Waterloo Street.
Mr. DeWeerd.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct. That portion of the fence is partially on city property, but it's a very small portion. The majority of it is outside of that triangle and on the applicant's property.
Yeah, therefore, there's no encroachment. If it was in the middle of that, there wouldn't be an encroachment of the city's property then, obviously.
I do not believe so, not in that location.
Thank you.
Councillor Clifford, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask the sign that they're showing on page 18 of the report, that Falstaff Family Center, is that on our property or is that on the owner's site? It says Falstaff Family Center, and there's a bunch of signs under it.
Mr. DeWeerd.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is that sign as well is on the applicant's property in that triangle. So that one does not need an encroachment, to my understanding.
Right. And my other question is, how do we handle when signs go up and down? Like as the owner was talking about, they're going to have some signs. And do they have to get approval each time, or is it just? I'm a bit curious about that.
Mr. DeWeerd.
I'm not sure who to speak. What our intention was to, in the spirit of a change copy sign, that we would have this fixed lattice work, this wooden lattice work, which would, for all intents and purposes, be the infrastructure in which the sign would go up. So I'm not conversant in this area, but it was our hope and feeling that we would not need to come back for every sign that we had to put up, but rather that there was a fixed infrastructure to the existing fence that would, I'm not sure what the technical term is, I apologize.
Mr. DeWeerd, do you want to follow up on that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it would be our understanding that these would be ground signs, and they would not need additional permits for the change of copy.
Anything further from subcommittee? Councillor Vasilakos.
I was just going to move the recommendation that we grant the exemptions with the following wording that staff had suggested.
Thank
so that's
you.
the second part.
Yeah, thank you. Any further discussion with regards to the motion put forward by Councillor Vasilakos? Councillor Vasilakos, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment that, you know, as I've said in the past, I don't like when people ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So I do appreciate very much the work that went into both reaching out to the neighbors and also making sure that this is one of those asking permission rather than forgiveness situations.
Thank you, Councillor Vasilakos. If there's no further questions or comments for Ms. McKennett or Mr. DeWeerd, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed of any, and that's unanimous. And thank you, Ms. McKennett, for your proactive work on this, and Mr. DeWeerd for working through this as well. We appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to item 5.3 with regards to proposed exemption from sign bylaw 159-2004 and its ground sign for the municipal address at 337 Home Street. And Mr. DeWeerd, are you going to take us through this one as well?
Yes, I would be happy to, through you, Mr. Chair. In this case, we have signs that were installed on a property by Starlight Investments at 337 Home Street. In this case, 9 signs were installed without permits, and the bylaw officers did attend the site and worked with the applicant to get 7 of the 9 signs in compliance with our bylaw. And there were 2 signs that they've asked to get permission after the fact, to quote Councillor Vassilaskos. In this case, sign one is, as you can see in the chart, is slightly larger in area and height, as well as setbacks from the driveway and the property line, as is sign number two. Additionally, the sign bylaw stipulates that only one ground sign may be erected per property. And as these properties are on the same parcel, they also exceed that provision. So the staff recommendation in this case is that the sign variance at the property for the two ground signs be denied, as they do not conform with the intent of the sign bylaw 159/2004. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Questions? Seeing none, there is a staff recommendation that's presented. Councillor Vassilaskos, will you move that staff recommendation? Thank you so much. Further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to item 5.4, sign variant, bylaw variance for Avon Maitland School District. And this is with regards to, I believe, Stratford District Collegiate. And I'll turn it back to you, Mr. DeWeerd.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. This sign application variance is for the Avon Maitland District School Board, as you have mentioned, for the address of 420 Foreman at Stratford District Secondary School. In this case, we received correspondence from the applicant looking to put an oversized change copy sign, electric change copy sign on the property to replace the existing change copy sign. We've done some research to look at neighboring municipalities as far as the size of the change copy sign. And based on the requirements in our bylaw, we've come to the conclusion that we do feel that the 1 square meter area that we have is fair based on other municipalities. As you can see on page 2, many of them have quite smaller areas. So in this case, we've landed on the recommendation that the committee would deny this application for the oversized electric change copy sign. Again, open to answer any questions that the subcommittee may have on this particular sign.
Councillor Clifford?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, when you were talking to them, is it they wanted that sign that's like how they show it here, as you're driving by, it would show up more? Is it like, is there a reason they want it that big? I'm just a bit curious, because if you're driving by, obviously they want people to notice what's there.
Through the chair, I'm not quite exactly sure the intention behind the larger sign, but it's quite possible that they're looking for people to see it a little bit further away.
Further questions for Mr. DeWeerd? Councillor Bunting?
It's more of a clarification. I'm just trying to understand this. So there's a certain square footage. What needs to be done by them? They got to shrink their sign. They got to move it to a different location, or to make it doable, or do they know that? I take it you've had conversations with the school board.
Through the chair, yes, we have had discussions with the school board on this. The current electric copy sign does have a variance on it already now for the size and type of sign that is installed there. So they're looking to further vary this to get a little bit larger on this parcel. So our understanding is they haven't ordered this sign. They are going through the right process here and looking for permission before they go and get this sign to install it.
And the percentage of increase, like, is it double, triple the size of the existing sign?
Yeah, through the chair, it's about double the size that's there currently. So we've just to elaborate, we have updated our sign bylaw in the meantime, so the sign that's there actually fits closer to what was in the bylaw than what was in the previous sign bylaw. So
thank you.
I would recall as principal making that application, so yeah, I do recall that. Councillor Clifford and then Councillor Vassilaskos.
I was just going to ask, is there a problem how bright the sign is? Like it is, there's houses across the road there. Is there any, is a larger sign, does it give off like poor illumination and a smaller, again, is there a problem with the brightness of the sign regardless?
Through the chair, you know, I would assume that a larger sign would give off more illumination, being that this is primarily, I mean, it's an institutional property, but it is surrounded by residential properties that light pollution may be a consideration. And my assumption is when the sign bylaw was originally written, that would have been the characteristic that they would have looked at in limiting the size in that case.
So there is a staff recommendation under 5.4 that this application be denied. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Vasilakos, will you move that? Thank you. Any other discussion? I'm happy that they haven't ordered it, and maybe this will lead to further discussion. Councillor Vasilakos?
I was just going to comment that I think the existing sign is more than sufficient to translate the information that they need to translate. Certainly, you know, when my kids were there was more than enough space to give a good visual translation of whatever information they were giving out. So I am a little surprised that they feel they need something that's twice that size, but for whatever reason.
So if there's no other questions or comments, that item has been moved. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to the updates, and a project update was circulated for May 2022. Are there any questions with regards to that document? And there's no, item 7, there's no advisory committee minutes. And our next subcommittee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June the 30th at 4:30. And if there's nothing else, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Clifford. All in favor?
Martin, I actually had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I think Councillor Ingram asked this on her note, but the property behind the grocery store like behind Sobeys, is there a start date? Like I know someone in behind and they were asking me what's happening, and I know, like, if I could have an update on that, I'd appreciate it.
There, Director Craiglaw, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, the manager of planning has left the meeting, so I'll do my best to respond, but I haven't heard any update at this point, so I would need to come back with council with that update, so I can do that the next meeting.
Thank you so much. I know that thank you for bringing that up. I know Councillor Ingram had asked that. Thank you, Councillor Clifford. Anything else? Then Councillor Clifford, will you motion adjournment? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.